3,000 Hamas terrorists stormed into Israel. They butchered 1,200 people from 41 countries, including 39 Americans. Proportionately, compared to our population size, that's like 20 9/11s in one day.
There was a standing ovation in the House chamber for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today. Prior to his remarks, he addressed a joint session of Congress asking for the United States' continued support in the war between Israel and Hamas. Lawmakers remain split about Netanyahu's appearance, with some Democrats, including California Representative Jared Huffman from the North Bay, opting to skip the event entirely. He wasn't alone. Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi didn't go, but she responded on X, saying in part, Benjamin Netanyahu's presentation in the House chamber today was by far the worst presentation of any foreign dignitary invited and honored with the privilege of addressing the Congress of the United States.
And here in the Bay Area, protesters rallied in San Francisco calling for Prime Minister Netanyahu's arrest. This rally, organized by Code Pink, disrupted Muni service this morning, and it caused traffic delays near Senator LaFonza Butler's office. Demonstrators say that they want to see Netanyahu arrested and convicted by the International Criminal Court. All right, joining us now to weigh in on the controversial visit is Stanford University lecturer in the Department of Communication, Janine Zakaria. Welcome to the program. So, obviously very controversial. You saw it. What's your takeaway?
Well, I used to report on Prime Minister Netanyahu for a very long time for the Washington Post, Bloomberg, and others. He's a very skilled orator. This was his fourth address to Congress. He has now spoken before a joint session of Congress more than any foreign leader ever. Winston Churchill spoke there 3 times, I believe. So it was, he was playing to his strengths. I would say that the speech was the first sustained defense of Israel's actions in Gaza since the October 7th massacres in Israel. And it was a defense of the way the Israeli military in particular has prosecuted this war. You had several members of IDF soldiers who were there, who were very ethnically diverse, to push back on the idea of Israel somehow as a white settler, illegitimate colonial state, the kind of rhetoric you've seen on campuses, including my own, Stanford, over the past year. It's something that played very well with the Republican side of the Congress. There were, I think, dozens of Democrats who weren't there. You showed Nancy Pelosi's statement. And it was really also a defense of the importance of the U.S.-Israel relationship. He, more clearly than I've heard him do in the past, sort of identify why U.S. support for Israel is important beyond the conflict in Gaza, namely to counter Iran. Now, back in Israel itself, though, it did not play well. There is daily, weekly, but even daily protests led by families of hostages who are still being held in Gaza now since October 7th, who were very disappointed that he didn't outline a clear plan for ending the war and bringing their loved ones home.
Well, that brings me to, I guess, what I was going to ask, which is, where do you see this headed? We're now, 10 months in almost to this war. Netanyahu said today that aside from one incident, there were almost 0 civilian casualties in Rafah, something that doesn't pass the eye test. How do you see his support continuing? Does it hinge on the U.S. presidential election? And what comes in the next, 3-4 months, do you think?
I think there's a lot of different things at play here. I think he was more careful than he's been in the past to strike a bipartisan note, although from what I could tell, and I was watching it on TV like you, but it seemed like the loudest applause, perhaps because there were more Republicans present in the chamber, was when he thanked President Trump for what are known as the Abraham Accords, which helped Israel forge diplomatic ties with 4 Arab countries. And he did thank President Biden for his long friendship and support. I don't know how much focus the administration, the U.S. administration, is going to be able to have for the conflict right now. That will give Prime Minister Netanyahu some time under less pressure, perhaps, to continue the military operations in Gaza. But the pressure on him domestically to wrap it up, to get the hostages home, to strike some sort of a deal is enormous. There are two things that are in conflict here. He says that victory is to get Hamas, defeat Hamas militarily, remove them from power, and bring the hostages home. But the only way to bring hostages home may be with a ceasefire with Hamas, which means implicitly not defeating them. So that's really the core conundrum there. And he really did not shed any light on what's going to happen over the next few months. I think that you're going to see lower level kind of incursions, daily kind of strikes in Gaza while Israel prepares for a potential conflict with Hezbollah, the Shiite militia group in the north. Things are really heated up with Lebanon right now.
And it makes you wonder how he's weighing his own political future with the best interests of his country and, you know, other countries that still have hostages. So
you got to wonder who he was speaking to in Congress.
It's incredibly complicated.
All right, well, fascinating. Thank you, Stanford University lecturer with the Department of Communication, Janine Zakaria. We hope to be speaking with you again soon. Have a good evening.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Janine.